Great. So, I'm exploring a theme over the next few weeks. Started last week, and the theme is the practice of internationality. So you might kind of wonder, in what way is internationality a practice? Hopefully, by the end of the evening, you'll be a little bit clearer about that. But it's interesting, isn't it, internationality? I was just, Cambridge, partly one of the reasons for exploring this theme is that Cambridge is quite international. So that's something that, exploring Buddhism is something that we can turn towards, because actually it's quite a significant practice. And really what the practice consists in is simply sort of intensifying our awareness, our mindfulness of our international interactions. That's really what it kind of consists in, but I want to draw out the significance of that, where that can lead. So I was doing that last week, but this week I want to recap a bit. I think there were some sort of loose threads from last week, so I just want to sort of follow up on those. Before exploring a little bit further how significant mindfulness is to this aspect actually of social conflict, because the way we're going to be exploring it is looking at a sutta that the Buddha goes into, which is essentially an analysis of social conflict, how we end up in this position of kind of social conflict. So what is it that connects us and what is it that divides us? So this is of significant broadly, to our own individual development, but it is broader than that. It's significant to how we function together in a community and as a society. So that's the plan. Let's see where we get to. So I was just thinking of little examples of internationality. When I was 19, I went to France ostensibly to learn French. Actually, I stayed there for 4.5 months, and as a tender at the tender age of 19, I was quite freaked out in a way by being in a different culture. I thought I sort of hated England and being English, and discovered that I liked it a lot more. Just the other day, I bumped into some people over in the orchard who'd just been having picnics in the orchard earlier, and recognised their accent. They were French, and just kind of fell into conversation. I speak French, so we were speaking French, and just enjoying just how friendly the French are, actually. Really, really friendly. It's like you're speaking to your neighbour that you've known for years, after hardly any time. It's something I've come to love about French culture. But back then, actually, I found the French a little bit unfriendly. I was then talking, another instance, I was talking to a Buddhist friend, a Frenchman, and he was saying how he'd lived in England, and he said, the English are kind of much, much more friendly than the French. Then I was over with my over in France for Christmas in my partner who's French family, who was making a joke about how unfriendly the English are, which I slightly took personally, actually. It's just interesting, isn't it, how easily we kind of fall into that kind of, the French are friendly, the English are not kind of thing. I was also struck watching Simon Reeve. I don't know if anyone watches Simon Reeve, his travel documentaries, very kind of strong social kind of theme in them. In Scandinavia, really, really interesting. Quite different sort of societies from our society. And very strong element of trust. In Denmark, it's quite normal just to leave your baby out in the park unattended. It's unthinkable in England that you would do, you'd be kind of ringing social services, wouldn't you? Parents have left the child in the park unattended. But that's quite normal. So very, very strong sense of trust. But what he was also pointing out was actually that's led to social minorities feeling really marginalised and disenfranchised, actually. So I thought, God, isn't that interesting? Isn't that kind of fascinating? Isn't that so instructive about human beings, that out of a concern for trust, you end up marginalising, dividing, you end up in conflict. It's really, really odd that is the consequence of kind of acting on a concern of trust. So I think this theme goes quite deep, actually, into what it means to be human. But I just thought I'd start with some examples that sort of struck me. And then, as I say, I want to unfold this a bit. And then in the second half, give a chance for us to get into groups and discuss a bit. Before, I also want to explore this in meditation, in the Metta Bhavana. So that's what we'll do this evening. So last week I started to
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I started to scribble a lot on the flip chart. So, broadly speaking, this is a sequence. It's not entirely sequential, actually, but these Sparsha, Vedana, Samya, Vitarka, Prapancha, which is linked to Anushaya, and ends up with Prapancha, Samya, Sankhar. So I've underlined in green the translations, or certain translations for those, but the direction is identified in red. So just to recap a little bit, because this is the Buddha's analysis of how we end up falling out of social conflict. So the Buddha brings it right back to our immediate experience. So at some point we come into contact, just by dint of having senses, we come into contact with an object. And this direct contact is always accompanied by a Vedana. So Vedana is a very kind of precise term. There's no total equivalent in English, but it's essentially saying that whatever we come into contact with is accompanied by a sense of pleasantness or unpleasantness or neutrality. That's what Vedana is. So you can translate it as feeling tone, but it's got nothing to do with emotions. There's much more going on in emotion. There's volition going on in emotion. But actually this is just the very immediate, mostly so faint we don't notice it. So it's happening right now. It's happening in every moment of experience. Every contact, as you look at me, as I look at you, that is accompanied by Vedana, this sort of tone of pleasantness, unpleasantness, everything I'm saying that you're taking in, everything that you're thinking too, is accompanied by this tone of pleasantness, unpleasantness, or neutrality. Neutrality really being just so faint that we can't really distinguish it as pleasant or unpleasant, and therefore we're not bothered about it. And then Samya. So Samya means perception. So you might wonder why that comes after, but the basic point is that all of this is what constitutes our kind of very ordinary sense experience. So the Buddha's approach is to just take that as a starting point, that actually we can just come back to this ordinary sense of cushions, candles, walls, our ordinary immediate experience, which Subhuti, I'm drawing from Subhuti, who's really sort of expounded this in a very helpful way. This sutta, who's a much loved teacher in our movement, he calls this primary experience, for reasons that are obvious on the other side of the board, that there's something other than primary experience, secondary experience. So this is our kind of it's our ordinary experience that we can come back to. It's what we share in common with the animal kingdom. But this next bit, vitarka, separates us, it seems, or to a large degree, from the animal kingdom, and that is reason. So vi is to divide, and tarka is reason. I might have spelt it wrong. It might be without the R. Anyway, sorry about that. Do check. And it's divided in the sense of we can be experiencing something, but we can also sort of step back from that and reason about it. So just, that's what a little example is when you're hungry. Maybe you're working away and then you kind of you start feeling a bit grumpy. Vitarka can sort of step back from that and go, oh, I'm hungry. Maybe I better go and get some food. So that's something that babies can't do. For example, babies don't know why they're experiencing discomfort. They just cry, and adults have to kind of do that for them. So this is our it's the kind of wonder of having a human mind, that we can do this. Actually, it potentially causes all sorts of problems, like nuclear bombs have come from this. Wars, all that sort of stuff comes into potential through this point, but it also is the domain of mindfulness. So perhaps a helpful way of translating it is integrated intelligence. So I want to say a bit more about vitarka as distinct from prapancha, because prapancha can be translated as alienated intelligence, alienated thought. But I'll sort of head on round for the moment. So prapancha, what happens is, so let's bring an experience to bear on this. You get a text, it's your friend. Your friend says, sorry, can't make it Thursday. So that's kind of, even though it's text, it's primary, something with primary experience, isn't it? Going on, that you get this text. So there's no explanation. And that might give rise to a thought. In fact, pre-thought, it gives rise probably to a Vedana. Slight feeling of being let down, slightly uncomfortable feeling of being let down. You've made this arrangement, text has come in. So that gives rise to thought. That's one of the effects of Vedana, that it kind of prompts us into thinking. On the basis of that initial thought, which is kind of, it might be just kind of, I wonder what's happened there. We can go further into prapancha. In fact, this is our tendency, that we're likely to go further into prapancha. So prapancha is distinct from vitarka in that prapancha is thought that is caught up in the anushayas, in our underlying tendencies. So if we've got a tendency to feel hard done by, to feel dropped, that's the thought that will arise. And we will have moved from just, oh, I wonder what happened, to I've been dumped, haven't I, or something like that. Do you see what I mean? So these two, in a way, this whole domain, you could sort of this whole domain here is where the spiritual life is lived out, or kind of trying to come back to our primary experience, and just reason mindfully. So we can all see in that moment there could be a whole number of reasons why that's happened. Could be reasonable, could be that your friend's kind of dumping you, but you don't know. So vitarka is that reasoned thought. So yeah, that's where we're kind of trying to stay. But our habits of mind are always leading us out of that into prapancha. So prapancha has a different kind of quality to it. Prapancha is unaware thought, is driven or automatic. So you may kind of, as it were, decide to have that thought, but the next one you probably don't fully decide. It's actually sort of kind of automatic. Oh, have I been dropped? You didn't sort of decide to have that thought. On the basis of that, you might have another thought. This is happening again. This is what happens, isn't it? Maybe my friend isn't really sort of serious about the friendship. Can you see how very easily is very recognisably kind of where we can end up spending a lot of our time, actually. And what prapancha's trying to do is trying to work out Vedana. Yeah, so we've had this text, slightly uncomfortable, and prapancha automatically is trying to kind of work out Vedana. Yeah. What that ends up doing is leading us round here. So, rah, kind of chatter. That actually leads us into prapancha samya sankha. So it's a very complicated looking word, isn't it? Samkha can be translated as together knowing. Prapancha we've seen already, and samya, perception. So it's sort of like constructed perception. Prapancha can also mean kind of complicating. It means sort of spreading out, associative kind of thinking. And so the consequence of falling into this unaware thinking, prapancha, is that we end up kind of constructing, pulling together a take, if you like, on what's happened. Oh, my friend is not that serious about friendship, about our friendship. So I don't know if you can recognize yourself in this. But it's not always easy to know. It's often easy to sort of think that you are thinking in a reasonable kind of way. It's one of the valuable things that Buddhism gives us, is it gives us different word for thought. So vitarka is kind of helpful thought. Prapancha is always unhelpful, spiritually unhelpful. Actually, it's broader than spiritually, but yeah. So one of the challenges we've got is to actually identify when are we in prapancha and when is it vitarka. That's helpful for us spiritually, but also in terms of kind of social conflict. So, yeah, I just wanted to, as I say, just say a little bit more about, to distinguish vitarka from prapancha, because I think it's a bit sort of subtle. It's not immediately obvious. And then I'll pause and see if it's starting to make sense. So, the character of vitarka is that it's at least sort of trying to see things as they are. That's the kind of character of vitarka. Kind of trying to see things as they are. So we're able to reason, and that reason is referenced back in experience. Yeah. So in the example, you can see, you can say, "Oh, I wonder why that is," and you can see in your experience that you don't know. There could be a number of different reasons as to why you've got that, as to what's going on for your friend. You see what I mean? So that's staying with experience. It's kind of seeing things as they are. Whereas prapancha's not like that. So this is aware thought, integrated thought. Prapancha is unaware thought. So it's alienated in the sense that it's not actually referred back to experience. So it, the functioning of prapancha, it's fascinating kind of watching it when you get into this state. Like you get a text like that, and then you go, oh, right. And then kind of a few hours later you're thinking about it again, aren't you? That happened before. You kind of back into kind of prapancha. And so what prapancha does is it's always kind of making connections between things. It's kind of linking things. So it's linking with, in that case, memory. This has happened before. It's all unconscious, all automatic. This has happened before. And then it might link to some other thought. So it's the function of prapancha is always kind of pulling together, kind of constructing a sort of a kind of construct, a kind of model, a representation of kind of what is going on. That's essentially what it is, and that's what this is: constructive perception. So one other thing to underline with prapancha is that in a way it's kind of thinking with an agenda. It's thinking with an agenda. Instead of just reasoning back into experience, it's thinking with an agenda. Its agenda is always, in the last analysis, brought back down to Vedana. The agenda of prapancha is to move away from unpleasant experiences, unpleasant Vedana, and make more, increase pleasant Vedana. So that's a very, very broad analysis, but that's the sort of underlying agenda of prapancha. Usually that's very, very unconscious for us. I suppose in my example, the underlying agenda, in a way, is kind of friendship. That's what I'm kind of interested in. And I'm interested, therefore, in kind of constructing a model of how to go about that. Yeah.
Sorry, did you say friendship?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's the first time you've used that word. I was wondering if you could say more.
Yeah, I will do. Yeah. Just I'll go into a bit more. Just let me refer back to my notes. Oh yeah, there's one other thing I want to say just before that. and that is that this reason on the one side and then unaware thinking. So vitarka is thought that is aware it's thought. Prapancha instead thinks that thought is a reality. Takes a construct as reality, or thought as fact. So that's a very important distinction between these two types of thinking. So let me just unfold that a bit by talking a bit about friendship. So I mentioned this example last week of an exchange I had with a good friend Akshayadeep, which I was really moved by. But he's Indian, so he's got quite a different kind of model, actually, of friendship. I've sort of discovered that more and more through being friends with him. And at a certain point, I thought, oh gosh, I do need to ask him about this. You know, that sort of uncomfortable, oh, I think we need to talk about this, sort of sense. This could be a bit tricky. Yeah. And that was the area, actually, of kind of counselling. So that would happen in our friendship. We'd arrange to do something and he'd sort of cancel, you know, there'd be something else come up and he'd kind of cancel. And I in the end, I sort of brought that up with him. I realised sort of it was important to bring up, because I'd sort of go into, I suppose, I wouldn't quite understand what was going on, and then there'd be prapancha. And the prapancha might tend to sort of think, oh, he's not really kind of that serious about friendship, actually. And that would move towards, kind of a set sort of take, if you like, that actually would then, I'd then sort of read him through that. Do you see what I mean? When I'd meet him, I'd read him through that. And of course, that can then have an effect on him, can't it? That I then seem sort of less, I sort of see him as not that interested, and that kind of is communicated through me being less motivated. Do you see what I mean? In friendship. But then that affects him. So you get this kind of feedback. When I come back to the primary experience, I kind of meet him again. Actually, my secondary experience is kind of starting to shape the kind of primary experience. So so that's where this practice of internationality kind of comes in, that actually these can be really, really valuable experiences when you get that kind of mutual misunderstanding. What can easily happen is, well, it could be conflict, or it could just be that you end up with this no-go zone, which is another kind of conflict, really. It's a kind of nice conflict where we're all very polite and decent, but actually we don't. We actually create distance by not going into things. It's a no-no for friendship, really. As long as there are no-go areas, there can't be friendship. That's a kind of quality of friendship, that there are no-go areas. There's sufficient trust to go into anything. That's ultimately where we're headed with Sangha. Of course, the conditions need to be there. Sometimes it takes, the right conditions in order to be able to go into no-go areas. But it's another form of kind of conflict. It's the sort of soft end of conflict, these kind of no-go areas. So either which way, mutual miscomprehension across nationalities. So the practice of internationality is actually to move towards them, to intensify our mindfulness. What is going on here? So that can direct us out of this kind of cycle through back to Vitarka. What is going on here? To actually kind of, with Vitarka, come back to our, reason back into our primary experience. What is actually going on here?